All right. Welcome back, everyone, for part two of our deep dive
Yeah.
into modern Indian history.
Oh, yeah.
And especially for all you UPSC aspirants out there,
Yes, definitely.
anyone who's fascinated by this era,
Absolutely.
if you're prepping for the GS1 Modern History section, this one's really for you.
Yeah.
And hey, if you haven't already hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future dives.
Please do.
So today,
Yes.
we're going beyond the usual textbook mentions
Yeah.
of Dadabhai Naoroji
Fascinating
to
figure.
really understand his impact
Right.
on India's journey to independence.
Yeah. I'm always surprised by how much Naoroji's story still resonates today.
Exactly.
He wasn't just a historical figure. He was a visionary leader whose ideas are still relevant in the 21st century.
And that's what we're going to uncover today.
Yes.
We'll explore how a man born in 1825 became known as the Grand Old Man of India.
The Grand Old Man.
We'll delve into his groundbreaking drain theory and how it challenged the very foundations of British rule.
Absolutely.
And we'll discover how Naoroji was a pioneer
Uh-huh.
in both economic and political spheres,
Yes.
laying the groundwork for leaders like Gandhi.
It's truly remarkable how much he accomplished in his lifetime.
Absolutely. To truly understand his impact, I think we need to go back to his roots.
Okay.
Born into a Parsi family in Bombay,
Right, in Bombay.
he quickly excelled in academics,
He did.
eventually becoming the first Indian professor
Wow.
at Elphinstone College.
That's impressive.
But what I find particularly striking
Okay.
is his early dedication to social reform,
Right.
especially advocating for women's education.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And often overlooked. Imagine this is 19th century India,
Right.
a time of immense social change.
Right.
Reform movements were challenging traditional norms.
Yeah.
And Naoroji was right there on the front lines,
Yeah.
championing women's education.
So you're saying that his commitment to social justice was as strong as his fight for political and economic rights?
Precisely, he saw those issues as interconnected.
Wow.
For Naoroji, a truly independent India wasn't just about self-rule, it was also about creating a just and equitable society for all Indians.
That's fascinating. It adds a whole new dimension to his legacy.
Absolutely. It also helps us understand his later work, especially his groundbreaking drain theory.
Ah, yes, the drain theory. This is where things get really interesting,
Yeah.
especially for our UPSC audience.
Yeah.
It's a crucial concept for understanding the economic arguments for Indian independence.
Absolutely.
Can you break down this theory for us?
Certainly in his seminal work, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India,
Okay.
Naoroji didn't just critique British policies.
Okay.
He systematically laid out how British rule was siphoning wealth out of India.
Uh-huh.
To benefit Britain, this was a radical idea at the time.
So he wasn't just saying that British rule was unfair. He was proving it was economically exploitative.
Exactly. He meticulously detailed the mechanisms of this drain.
Okay.
For example, how high administrative costs of British rule were burdened on Indians,
All right.
and the unfair trade policies that crippled Indian industries while benefiting British ones.
So even the salaries of British officials were being paid for by Indians.
Precisely add to that the pensions for British officials flowing out of India and the massive interest on debt India owed to Britain. It's like a one-way flow of wealth out of the country.
That's a pretty damning indictment of the system.
Yeah.
How did the British respond to this theory?
Well, they obviously tried to discredit it, but Naoroji's meticulous research and persuasive arguments made it difficult to ignore. What's remarkable is that he presented these arguments within the British system itself. He became a prominent voice in British intellectual circles, forcing them to confront the economic realities of their colonial rule.
He really took the fight to their doorstep. Now, I know Naoroji also had a significant political career. Didn't he become a member of the British Parliament?
He did in 1892. He became the first Indian to be elected to the British Parliament representing the Liberal Party.
Wow, that must have been a huge moment in history. Imagine an Indian MP in the heart of the British Empire advocating for India's rights.
It was a monumental achievement. It wasn't easy for him to navigate the complexities of British politics. He faced prejudice and resistance, but he never gave up. He used his platform to raise awareness about India's plight, introduce bills for Indian representation, and tirelessly advocate for his people.
So he wasn't just content with exposing the drain. He actively sought to change the system from within. That's impressive. Did this parliamentary experience influence his views on achieving independence for India?
It certainly shaped his perspective while he believed in working within the system. His experience in Parliament also showed him the limitations of appealing to British goodwill. He realized that true change wouldn't come from begging for concessions. It had to come from Indians themselves demanding their rights.
This is where his leadership within the Indian National Congress becomes particularly significant, right?
Exactly. He wasn't just an armchair critic. Naoroji was deeply involved in shaping the Indian independence movement. His work with the Indian National Congress was crucial in this regard.
Speaking of the Congress, didn't he become its president?
He did not once, but 3 times he presided over the Congress sessions in 1886, 1893, and 1906. These presidencies are fascinating because they reflect the evolution of his thinking and the growing demands for self-rule within the Congress. His first presidency in 1886
Right.
focused on advocating for greater Indian representation in legislative councils
Okay.
and the civil service.
Uh-huh.
It was about demanding a voice
Okay.
within the existing framework.
So at that point, he still believed in working within the system.
Yes, but his views were evolving by the time he presided over the Congress again in 1893.
Okay.
The demand for Swaraj, for self-rule, was gaining momentum.
Okay.
Naoroji himself had become more assertive
Uh-huh.
in his calls for greater autonomy.
Hold on. You mentioned Swaraj. Could you explain that a little more for our listeners who might not be familiar with the term?
Of course, Swaraj is a Hindi word
Okay.
that roughly translates to self-rule
Okay.
or self-governance.
Okay.
It became a central rallying cry
Uh.
of the Indian independence movement,
Uh-huh.
encapsulating the desire for freedom from British control and the ability to govern their own affairs.
Thanks for clarifying that. So how did Naoroji contribute to the growing movement for Swaraj?
Well, his third presidency in 1906 was particularly significant.
Okay.
It marked a turning point in the Congress,
Right.
with the demand for Swaraj taking center stage.
Okay.
Naoroji's presidential address that year
Right.
laid out a clear vision for self-rule and the need for Indians to take control of their own destiny.
It seems like he went from advocating for reform within the system to demanding complete independence. What drove that shift?
I think his experiences in British politics certainly played a role, but I also think it was the growing frustration among Indians with the pace of change. They realized that British promises of gradual reforms were often empty.
Right.
Naoroji reflected this growing impatience, becoming a powerful voice for complete self-determination.
So his journey is really a reflection of the evolution of the Indian independence movement itself.
Precisely.
Okay.
From moderate demands for representation to a more assertive call for Swaraj,
Mm-hmm.
Naoroji's trajectory mirrors the changing aspirations of the Indian people.
Okay.
He was a leader who understood the pulse of the nation.
And how did his ideas influence later leaders like Gandhi?
Profoundly, Gandhi's emphasis on Swadeshi, the idea of self-reliance and promoting Indian industries, is rooted in Naoroji's drain theory.
Okay.
They both understood that true independence required economic freedom as well.
So Naoroji's work on economic critique laid the groundwork for Gandhi's economic program decades later. That's quite a legacy.
It's incredible, isn't it? And it's not just Gandhi. Even Nehru's focus on planned economic development.
Right.
His emphasis on building a modern industrial base for India can be traced back to Naoroji's vision
Okay.
for an economically self-sufficient India.
It's amazing how these ideas from over a century ago still resonate today.
It speaks to the enduring power of his analysis
Right.
and the fact that some challenges remain remarkably persistent.
So for all of you listening, especially our UPSC aspirants, what are the key takeaways from Naoroji's life and work?
First, understand the depth and breadth of his contributions.
Okay.
We're talking economic critique, political activism, social reform, international advocacy.
Yeah.
Naoroji was a force on multiple fronts.
A true multi-hyphenate, as they say these days.
Exactly. And second, recognize how his work laid the groundwork for India's independence movement.
Right.
He provided both the intellectual arguments and the organizational skills to push for self-rule.
He wasn't just a thinker, he was a doer. A crucial distinction.
Couldn't agree more now before we wrap up.
Okay.
I want to leave you with something to ponder. How do Naoroji's ideas about economic justice and self-reliance resonate in India today? What lessons can we draw from his life and work to address the challenges facing the nation in the 21st century?
That's a fantastic question to consider. It's clear that Naoroji's legacy continues to shape India's journey. His insights remain relevant, and his life story is a testament to the power of one individual to make a difference. So keep exploring this fascinating period of history, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive. It's striking how Naoroji's work manages to bridge that gap between historical analysis and contemporary issues.
Absolutely.
It's not just about, memorizing dates and events for an exam. It's about understanding the underlying forces that have shaped India's economic and political landscape.
Exactly. And for our UPSC aspirants, that's where the real value lies.
Yeah.
Naoroji's work provides a framework for understanding not just the past, but also the present. Take his ideas about economic justice, for example.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does the drain theory connect to modern-day India?
Well, think about the debates we have today about inequality, about fair trade practices, about ensuring that economic growth benefits all sections of society.
Mhm.
Those are echoes of the issues Naoroji raised over a century ago.
So you're saying even though India is independent now, some of the economic challenges he highlighted are still relevant.
Absolutely. The context has changed. Of course, we're not under colonial rule anymore, but the core principles of economic justice, equitable distribution of wealth,
Right.
and ensuring that development benefits everyone, those are still issues that India grapples with today.
That's a really insightful connection. It shows how studying history isn't just about looking back.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the roots of contemporary issues.
Precisely. And for UPSC aspirants, being able to draw those connections is crucial.
Yeah.
It demonstrates a deeper understanding of the subject matter and the ability to apply historical knowledge to contemporary issues.
I'm also curious about his concept of self-reliance. What did Naoroji mean by that, and how does it apply to India today?
For Naoroji, self-reliance wasn't just about political independence, it was about economic empowerment.
Okay.
He believed that India needed to develop its own industries, promote its own goods, and reduce its dependence on foreign powers. It was about taking control of their own economic destiny.
And that's a concept that resonates even more strongly today, right?
Absolutely.
In a globalized world with all the talk about self-sufficiency and reducing dependence on imports, Naoroji's ideas seem remarkably prescient.
Absolutely. His emphasis on promoting indigenous industries, supporting local artisans, and building a strong domestic economy is incredibly relevant in today's context.
It's like he laid out a blueprint for sustainable economic development that's still applicable today.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying someone like Naoroji so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's not just about historical facts, it's about drawing lessons that can inform our present and shape our future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dadabhai Naoroji's life and legacy, I think the key takeaway for our listeners, especially those preparing for the UPSC, is to go beyond the surface.
Yeah.
Don't just memorize the dates and events. Delve deeper into his ideas, understand their context, and think about how they connect to contemporary India.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Naoroji's story is a reminder that history is not just a collection of facts. It's a living, breathing source of insights that can guide us in navigating the complexities of the present and the future.
Absolutely. And remember, folks, history is full of fascinating figures like Dadabhai Naoroji waiting to be discovered. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that curiosity alive. We'll see you in our next deep dive.